You would think by most of the stuff that's out there that apple cider vinegar is helping aid in digestion, and in a lot of ways it is, but it's actually, in some wraparound ways, slowing down digestion that makes it so that you can potentially enjoy more carbs. So what I want to focus on is apple cider vinegar's interplay with carbohydrate consumption, not from a glucose modulation perspective, but actually from a little bit more of what happens in the way of digestive enzymes. It's very fascinating. So if you have apple cider vinegar along with your carbohydrates, keep doing it. If you haven't done it yet, it's not a bad idea to implement, whether you're using a capsule or a liquid. So let's break it down. Hey, I want you to check out today's video sponsor, which is Thrive Market. You've probably seen them a lot on my channel. They're an online membership-based grocery store. So you can go online, you can just filter by exactly what you're after. If you're after ketogenic, if you're after paleo, fasting, vegan, whatever it is you're after, you can sort by that, and then you can filter it down even more. And then you order, everything gets delivered to your doorstep within a couple of days. It has revolutionized how my family does shopping, at least for our pantry. Plus, you can get some pretty awesome sustainable meat and seafood as well. So I put a link down below. You can save 25% off your first order and select a free gift when you use that link down below in the description. So a big thank you to Thrive Market. Now let's rock. So the International Journal of Pharmacology published a fascinating study that kind of got me thinking about this. Okay, it was done in rats, but it was still very intriguing. So for 4 weeks, they gave these rats apple cider vinegar. What they found is that the digestive activity changed. The activity of maltase, sucrase, and lactase in their guts decreased. Sounds so wild because people talk about how apple cider vinegar is going to improve digestion, and it is in a lot of weird ways, but it's still decreasing the activity of these disaccharides. Now, the whole idea behind this is these 3 compounds that the activity is decreased, well, they are disaccharides that ultimately break down into monosaccharides or help carbohydrates break down into monosaccharides. So when these disaccharides aren't able to reduce, they're essentially not turning into a simpler sugar, i.e. glucose. So less activity from maltase, sucrase, and lactase means that carbohydrates are breaking down slower, and they're not getting broken down into as simple of a sugar, meaning less of a blood glucose spike, but also slower absorption. That means more satiety. That means less blood sugar spike, more modulation there. That means probably less feeling hungry throughout the course of the day. So when you look at how this works in terms of the mechanistic actions, it's very, very phenomenal. Okay, well now let's touch on one other thing that has to do with carbohydrates. There was a study that was published in the Journal of Biochemistry and Biophysical Research Communications, and it looked at a bunch of different things. It was looking once again at rats, but it was looking at an in vitro arm and an in vivo arm, meaning they looked in petri dish studies and in the actual body studies. Well, it was interesting because they found that, okay, well, yeah, glucose modulation did take effect, but what were some of the actions? Well, one of the actions was that acetic acid, again, the primary constituent of apple cider vinegar in this particular case that we're focusing on, actually improved GLUT4 translocation in the periphery tissues. What the heck does that mean? That means that glucose was utilized better in the tissues at the cell. It meant that GLUT4, which normally is a glucose transporter that lives inside of a cell, was able to translocate to the surface of a cell, and GLUT4 is like a big net for glucose. So when it's inside the cell, glucose just goes rushing by, keeping blood glucose relatively high. Okay, but when GLUT4 can actually translocate, it goes to the surface of a cell, and it catches the glucose and brings it in. So how is acetic acid doing this? Well, acetic acid, ACV, whatever, it's doing it through a pretty complex nitric oxide synthase pathway, that honestly is just still getting discovered. But the bottom line is there's a potential improvement in how the tissues and the cells are using glucose. So what does that mean? Well, that means when you are potentially eating carbohydrates, that maybe those sugars, those carbohydrates get taken up by the cell better rather than contributing to higher levels of glucose and then circulating and potentially leading to more body fat storage, right? So apple cider vinegar may really play a strong role if you want to consume it with carbohydrates. Again, if you're not going overboard, or maybe if you're having a cheat meal and you want to just kind of lessen the potential impact a little bit more, it's something you can consider because the research is pretty darn solid. Anyhow, as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.